My name is Sarah. Please don't drive or operate heavy machinery while listening to this sleep audio. Tonight, we will aboard the train of dreams. The train's whistle pierced the quiet of the night, its sound as otherworldly melody that lingered in the cool air. It wasn't the shrill, abrupt whistles of ordinary times. No, this one sang, a sound that echoed softly, vibrating as if it were calling out to the stars themselves. Its tone carried warmth, beckoning the dreamers from their slumber toward the station of beginnings. The platform was aglow with a strange luminescence that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The soft glow bathed everything in hues of gold and silver, giving the scene an ethereal quality. Time here felt suspended, as though the station existed outside the laws of reality, a space where the waking world faded away and the possibilities of the dreamscape began to unfurl. The station of beginnings was unlike any ordinary railway station. Its arches and columns were carved from a material that looked like polished moonstone, shimmering faintly under the night sky. The floor beneath the passengers' feet seemed alive, its smooth surface rippling gently, as though mimicking the soft waves of a distant ocean. Hanging above the platform were intricate chandeliers made of crystalline flowers that glowed faintly, illuminating the station with a soothing light. A sense of calm enveloped everyone who arrived at the station. The passengers drifted through the misty air, moving with the lightness of leaves floating on water. Some carried belongings, a suitcase, a small satchel, a favorite book, but others came empty-handed, as though they had left their burdens behind. Each one clutched a golden ticket, its edges shimmering like the embers of a fading fire. The letters on the ticket read, in elegant script, "The Dream Express." The sound of soft footsteps echoed gently as more passengers arrived. A young boy held his mother's hand tightly, his eyes wide, scanning the station with a mixture of wonder and nervousness. A man in a dark coat and fedora stood quietly, his face half lit by the glow of the chandeliers as he examined his ticket. An elderly woman with a warm smile leaned on her cane, her silver hair cascading like a waterfall over her shoulders. Though no words were spoken, the air was thick with anticipation. Standing at the far end of the platform was the Dream Express. It was a train unlike any other, a vision of elegance and mystery. Its body gleamed like liquid velvet under the faint glow of starlight. The brass details of its carriages shimmered as though they had been polished with sunlight, and the windows were dark, offering no glimpse of what lay inside. The locomotive itself was grand and commanding, its front adorned with a clock that had no hands, its face instead filled with constellations that shifted and twinkled. The conductor stood beside the open doors of the first carriage. He was a tall, slender figure dressed in a deep navy uniform trimmed with golden embroidery. His hat, perched neatly on his head, bore the emblem of the Dream Express, a crescent moon cradling a single star. His face was kind, his expression serene, and his voice, when he spoke, was as smooth and soothing as a lullaby. "Welcome aboard the Dream Express," he said, tipping his hat to each passenger. "Your dreams await. Please find your seat and make yourself comfortable. The journey begins shortly." One by one, the passengers boarded the train. Each step onto the train felt like crossing a threshold into another world. The moment their foot touched the gleaming steps, they felt lighter, as though the gravity of the waking world had loosened its grip on them. Inside, the carriages were as luxurious as they were surreal. The seats were upholstered in a fabric that shimmered with the colors of the aura, shifting subtly as the passengers moved past. The walls were lined with intricate carvings of fantastical landscapes, mountains that floated in the air, forests made of crystal, and cities suspended in bubbles. The air was filled with a faint, comforting hum, a sound that seemed to come from the train itself, as though it were alive. As the passengers settled into their seats, the trains began to hum softly, its engines awakening with a gentle rhythm. The young boy, still clutching his mother's hand, looked out the window with wide-eyed wonder. To his astonishment, he saw that the station was no longer surrounded by the familiar sights of his town. Instead, the landscape outside seemed to shift and shimmer as though it were dissolving into a sea of stars. The conductor walked down the aisle, his footsteps making no sound against the soft, carpeted floor. He paused beside each passenger, checking their tickets with a nod and a warm smile. When he reached the boy and his mother, he knelt down, meeting the child's curious gaze. "First time on the Dream Express?" the conductor asked gently. The boy nodded shyly, clutching his ticket tightly. "Where does it go?" he whispered. The conductor's smile deepened. "Wherever your dreams take you," he replied. "Every stop is a new adventure, a place only you can imagine." The boy's eyes sparkled with excitement as the conductor stood and continued down the aisle. Once all the tickets had been checked, the conductor returned to the front of the carriage and tipped his hat once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dream Express. Please sit back, relax, and allow the journey to unfold. Our first stop, the Garden of Echoes." With that, the train began to move. It glided forward with a grace that defied physics, as though it were riding on a current of air. The wheels made no sound, and the vibrations were soft, almost imperceptible. As the train left the station, the passengers watched as the world outside transformed. The starlit sky seemed to stretch closer, wrapping around the train like a cocoon. The constellations danced, their light weaving patterns that pulsed in time with the train's gentle hum. The boy leaned closer to the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Mom, look," he whispered, pointing at the sky. "The stars are moving." His mother smiled and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "They're guiding us," she said softly, "taking us to where dreams are born." The train gathered speed, its path invisible yet sure. It moved not on tracks, but on the fabric of dreams themselves, weaving through the uncharted realms of the subconscious. The passengers, lulled by the rhythmic hum, began to feel a deep sense of peace. Some closed their eyes, their heads resting against the soft cushions of their seats, while others gazed out the windows, their minds drifting as the Dream Express carried them toward the unknown. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The train was a world unto itself, a sanctuary where the burdens of reality melted away, leaving only the pure, unfiltered essence of the dreamer. As the Dream Express continued its journey, its passengers felt a sense of wonder, unlike anything they had ever known, a feeling that whispered to them of infinite possibilities. This was only the beginning. The Dream Express glided effortlessly into the shimmering expanse of starlit mist, slowing to a halt, so smooth and gentle that the passengers barely noticed. Outside the window, the world seemed to bloom with golden light. Where there had been darkness and endless constellations moments before, now lay a breathtakingly vibrant landscape, the Garden of Echoes. The conductor's voice came softly over the train's intercom, as warm and inviting as ever. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garden of Echoes. You may disembark here for a time. Please follow the paths that call to you and listen closely. The echoes will guide you. The passengers exchanged curious glances before stepping off the train, their footsteps quiet on the soft, glowing cobblestones of the platform. Outside, the air was unlike anything they had ever breathed. It was cool yet comforting, carrying the faint scent of fresh rain mixed with blooming jasmine. There was something electric about it, as though it held the potential of every whispered thought or forgotten feeling. The garden stretched endlessly in all directions, its paths winding through towering flowers and shimmering trees. Each plant seemed to glow faintly, casting soft pools of light on the ground. The flowers were enormous, their petals as delicate as silk, and painted in hues that didn't exist in the waking world. Some were golden like the sun, others iridescent like mother of pearl, and still others seemed to ripple and shift colors as if alive. As the passengers wandered deeper into the garden, they began to notice something extraordinary. The air wasn't silent. It was filled with faint murmurs, like distant whispers carried on a breeze. The closer they walked to the flowers, the clearer the sounds became. Each flower, they realized, held an echo, some faint, some strong, but all unmistakably tied to a memory or feeling. A little girl with curly hair and wide eyes approached a sapphire blue tulip. She reached out a tentative hand, her fingers brushing against the soft petals. Instantly, the tulip began to hum, and the sound filled the air around her, a sound like waves gently crashing on a distant shore. Her eyes widened in surprise, and her face lit up with recognition. "Mommy," she called, tugging at her mother's hand, "it's the beach. It's the sound from when we went to the beach last summer." Her mother knelt beside her, brushing the girl's hair from her face. She listened closely and smiled. The sound was vivid, transforming them both back to a warm day when the sun had shone brightly and the waves had lapped gently at their feet. Nearby, a man in his late 40s stopped before a cluster of gold roses. He hesitated, his brow furrowed, as though trying to recall something just out of reach. Finally, he leaned in, and the roses began to sing. It wasn't a song with words, but a melody that resonated deeply. His breath caught as a forgotten memory surfaced, a summer evening spent dancing with his first love, their laughter blending with the music of a street performer's violin. "I'd almost forgotten," he murmured to himself, his voice tinged with wonder. The echoes weren't always joyful. A young woman, drawn to a violet daisy, touched its petal and immediately felt tears spring to her eyes. The sound was soft, the gentle murmur of her grandmother's voice as she told bedtime stories, her tone laced with warmth and love. The memory was bittersweet. Her grandmother had passed years ago, and the sound was like a long-lost hug reaching out from the past. The garden seemed to tailor itself to each dreamer. As they wandered, the paths led them to flowers that resonated with their own stories, their own echoes. Some passengers stayed close to the main paths, exploring cautiously, while others ventured deeper into the garden, drawn by the allure of mystery. The conductor, now standing at the edge of the train, observed the passengers with a serene smile. He had seen this countless times before, the way the garden brought out emotions both forgotten and cherished. it was always a marvel to watch. One particularly adventurous soul, a boy of about 10, wandered farther than most. His steps led him to a secluded corner of the garden where a single enormous tree stood. Its branches stretched high into the star-filled sky, and its leaves glowed with a soft golden light. Hanging from the tree were hundreds of tiny bells, each one swaying gently despite the absence of wind. The boy reached out and touched one of the bells, and a deep, resonant chime filled the air. It was a sound unlike any other, a combination of voices, laughter, and music, all swirling together in a harmonious symphony. For a moment, the boy was filled with a sense of boundless joy, as though he were hearing not just one memory, but the collective echoes of happiness from countless lives. Beautiful, isn't it? The boy turned to find the conductor standing nearby, his hands clasped behind his back. "What is this place?" the boy asked, his voice filled with awe. The conductor smiled. "The Garden of Echoes is a place where memories take form. Every sound you hear, every flower you see, holds a fragment of someone's story. Some are from long ago, others from dreams yet to come. It's a reminder that no moment is ever truly lost." The boy nodded, though he didn't entirely understand. He touched another bell, letting its soft chime wash over him. Meanwhile, back on the main paths, a group of passengers found themselves drawn to a cluster of strange, crystalline flowers. These blooms didn't hum or sing like the others. Instead, they reflected light in mesmerizing patterns, creating images that flickered briefly before dissolving into mist. One by one, the passengers leaned in closer, watching as the flowers revealed fragments of dreams they had long forgotten, visions of adventures they had imagined as children, of possibilities they had once believed in but had let go. By the time the train's whistle sounded again, signaling that it was time to depart, the passengers were reluctant to leave. They had each been given a gift, an echo of something precious, something uniquely theirs. As they boarded the train, their expressions were a mix of awe and serenity. Some clutched imaginary keepsakes from the garden, as though they were holding on to the feeling it had given them. Others sat quietly, gazing out the windows as the train began to move once more. The Garden of Echoes faded into the distance, its golden light dissolving back into the starlight mist, but its echoes lingered in the hearts of passengers, a reminder of the beauty and complexity of their own inner worlds. The boy, sitting beside his mother, looked out the window one last time. He didn't understand everything he had seen, but he knew one thing for certain. The Garden of Echoes was a place he would never forget. And as the Dream Express carried them onward to their next destination, the passengers couldn't help but wonder what other marvels awaited them in the landscape of their dreams. The Dream Express continued its graceful journey, gliding along its invisible tracks through a sky woven with constellations. The passengers, still in awe of the Garden of Echoes, spoke quietly among themselves or gazed out the windows, watching as the stars seemed to shift and pulse as though they were alive. The train's soft hum was a soothing rhythm that blended seamlessly with the silence of the dreamscape. The conductor's voice echoed over the intercom, his tone as warm and calming as ever. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next stop, the River of Stars. Please prepare to disembark and experience the currents of possibility." The train began to slow, but instead of stopping at a platform or a solid piece of land, it came to rest above a vast, shimmering expanse of light. The River of Stars stretched out as far as the eye could see, its surface rippling like liquid silver. Thousands, no millions, of tiny orbs of light floated gently on the water, glowing with the soft brilliance of starlight. The passengers stepped out of the train and found themselves on a floating dock made of translucent crystal, which seemed to hover just above the river's surface. The dock stretched into the distance, lined with small, elegant boats carved from the same shimmering material. Each boat glowed faintly, its edges rimmed with silver, and was adorned with a single lantern that flickered like a captured firefly. "Please take a boat," the conductor said, gesturing toward the river. "The river of stars flows with the dreams of countless worlds. Each star you see holds a possibility, a version of what was, what is, or what might yet be. The river will guide you." The passengers hesitated for only a moment before stepping into the boats, which swayed gently as they climbed aboard. The young boy who had been so captivated by the Garden of Echoes sat in the front of a boat beside his mother, clutching the edge with excitement. A man and woman, strangers until this moment, shared a boat and exchanged curious glances, as if silently agreeing to share the journey ahead. The boats drifted away from the dock, carried by an unseen current. The water beneath them glowed faintly, as if the river itself was alive, pulsing with the rhythm of a distant heartbeat. The stars floating on its surface shimmered and danced, their light reflecting in the passengers' eyes. As the first boat moved farther into the river, its lantern began to glow brighter, and the stars nearest to it seemed to respond. One of the orbs floated toward the boat, hovering just above the water. The boy reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing against the light. The moment he touched it, the star pulsed brightly, and an image filled the air around him. It was as though he had opened a window to another life. He saw himself, a little older, standing in the middle of a grand library. His arms were full of books, and his face was lit with joy as he helped another child find a story. The vision faded after a few moments, leaving the boy blinking in wonder. "Was that me?" he asked, turning to his mother. She nodded, her own eyes shining. "I think it was. A part of you, maybe. Something you might become." Other passengers began to reach for the stars floating near their boats. Each time someone touched one, the star would glow brightly and reveal a glimpse of a life, a possibility tied to their dreams and potential. A young woman, sealed alone in her boat, touched a star and saw herself standing on a stage, her voice filling an auditorium with a song so beautiful it brought tears to the audience's eyes. She gasped softly, her hand flying to her chest as the vision faded. "I never thought I could sing like that," she murmured, her voice trembling. An older man, his weathered hand shaking, touched a star and saw himself as a young explorer, climbing mountains and crossing vast deserts. The image was vibrant, filled with the thrill of adventure. When it disappeared, the man leaned back in his seat, a wistful smile on his face. "Perhaps it's not too late," he whispered to himself. Not all the stars revealed joyous or triumphant moments. One woman touched a star and saw a vision of herself alone in a quiet house, her face lined with regret. It wasn't a punishment, the river seemed to say, but a possibility, a life that could unfold if she continued to let fear dictate her choices. She wiped a tear from her cheek and looked out at the shimmering expanse of the river. "I don't want that," she said softly, her voice firm. The boats drifted deeper into the river, and the stars grew more vibrant, their light casting intricate patterns on the water's surface. The passengers began to notice that the river wasn't just a reflection of their dreams, it was alive, responding to their emotions. their hopes, and their fears. The current carried them gently but purposely, as though it knew exactly where they needed to go. The boy in the front boat pointed towards the horizon, where the river seemed to meet the sky. "What's out there?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity. The conductor, who had silently appeared in a boat of his own, smiled. "The edge of the dream," he said, "a place where all possibilities converge. But the river doesn't take you there. It takes you to the places you need to see, the moments you need to feel." As the boats drifted onward, the passengers grew quieter, lost in thought. Some closed their eyes, letting the gentle sway of the river lull them into a peaceful reverie. Others stared at the stars, their minds racing with the visions they had seen. Eventually, the boats began to circle back toward the dock. The stars that had floated close now drifted away, their light dimming as if bidding farewell. The passengers stepped back onto the crystalline platform, their faces reflecting a mixture of emotions: wonder, joy, and even quiet determination. The boy looked up at his mother as they returned to the Dream Express. "Do you think the river knows us?" he asked. She smiled and ruffled his hair. "I think it knows our dreams," she said. As the passengers settled back into their seats, the train began to move once more, leaving the river of stars behind. The boy watched through the window as the glowing expanse faded into the distance, its light blending with the starlit sky. For a long moment, there was silence in the carriage. The Dream Express glided onward, its passengers quietly reflecting on the stories they had uncovered. Some clutched invisible books, the stories they had taken with them etched into their hearts. The train hummed softly as it moved through a star-dappled sky, its windows offering glimpses of constellations that shimmered like jewels on black velvet. The conductor's voice resonated through the carriages, its steady warmth gathering their attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next destination, the Forest of Timeless Nights, a place where time stands still and the whispers of dreams long past mingle with those yet to come. Please prepare to disembark." The train slowed as it approached its next stop, and the passengers leaned toward the windows, curious to see what awaited them. The landscape outside was shrouded in an ethereal twilight, a soft, dusky glow that seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. The forest stretched endlessly, its towering trees pulsing faintly with a golden light. The train doors opened to reveal a winding path of soft, mossy ground that glimmered faintly, as though it had been dusted with stardust. The passengers stepped onto the path, their footsteps soundless as they entered the Forest of Timeless Nights. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and something sweeter, like the faint aroma of blooming flowers that couldn't quite be seen. The forest was alive with a quiet energy, its silence broken only by the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional chirping of unseen creatures. As the passengers ventured deeper, they noticed something remarkable. The trees were not ordinary trees. Their bark shimmered with veins of light, and their branches bore not leaves, but glowing orbs that swayed gently, casting a warm golden hue. Each orb seemed to contain a faint, swirling mist, as though it held a secret waiting to be revealed. The forest seemed to know its visitors, guiding them without words. The young boy and his mother were drawn to a clearing where a massive oak tree stood, its roots twisting into intricate patterns. The boy reached out to touch the trunk, and the tree responded with a soft, melodic hum. Images flickered before them, projected into the air like a dream made visible. The boy saw himself climbing trees, laughing as he reached for the highest branches. He saw a version of himself he had forgotten, the fearless child who had once believed he could touch the cloud. His mother watched with tears in her eyes, her heart aching with both joy and nostalgia. Elsewhere in the forest, a group of passengers found themselves in a clearing where time itself seemed to fold in. A soft mist swirled at their feet, and the glowing orbs hung from the trees and began to pulse rhythmically. One of the passengers, a woman in her 30s, hesitated before stepping into the center of the clearing. As she did, an orb drifted down from the branches and hovered before her. When she touched it, a vision unfolded. She saw herself as a child, standing in her grandmother's garden. The warm summer air was filled with the scent of roses, and her mother's voice was soft and steady as she told a story about bravery. The woman's eyes filled with tears as the vision faded. "I'd forgotten that story," she whispered. "She told me I could be brave, no matter what." The forest seemed to hum in response, the energy wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. A man who had been walking alone found himself drawn to a narrow path that wound deeper into the forest. The trees here were taller, their light dimmer, creating an atmosphere of quiet contemplation. The path forked ahead, splitting into two distinct directions. As he stood at the crossroads, a tree nearby began to pulse with a brighter glow. Its orb floated down towards him, and when he touched it, he saw two possible versions of himself, one who had pursued his passion for writing, and another who had let fear and practicality hold him back. The vision was stark and vivid, and when it faded, the man stood silent for a long time. He finally whispered to himself, "It's not too late to choose." The forest seemed to nod in agreement, the path ahead gently illuminated to guide him forward. In another part of the forest, a group of passengers discovered a small glade where fireflies danced in intricate patterns. These weren't ordinary fireflies. Their light was brighter, more vibrant, and they moved as though tracing invisible shapes in the air. The passengers reached out, and the fireflies responded, circling their hands before landing gently on their palms. Each firefly carried a memory, which unfolded like a story told in light. One woman saw herself as a child, standing on a beach and building sandcastles with her father. She had forgotten the warmth of those moments, but the memory now felt as fresh as the day it had happened. A man saw himself proposing to his wife beneath a canopy of stars. The memory brought a smile to his face, and he resolved to tell her how much she still meant to him when he returned home. The fireflies lingered only briefly before taking flight, their light joining the glowing orbs in the trees above. As the passengers continued to explore, they began to notice something unusual. Their sense of time had vanished. There were no clocks, no sense of urgency, only the present moment, stretching endlessly. A young couple sat beneath a towering tree, holding hands as they watched the orbs sway gently above them. They spoke softly about their hopes and fears, finding comfort in the stillness of the forest. An elderly woman, who had walked with slow, deliberate steps at the start of the journey, now moved with newfound ease. The forest had given her a sense of lightness, as though it had lifted years of burdens from her shoulders. When the train's whistle sounded in the distance, the passengers felt a pang of reluctance. The forests of timeless nights had given them something precious, a moment of stillness, a chance to reflect on their lives without the weight of time pressing down on them. As they made their way back to the train, the forest seemed to bid them farewell. The glowing orbs flickered softly, and the trees swayed gently as if nodding goodbye. The young boy paused at the edge of the forest, looking back one last time. "You think the forest remembers us?" he asked his mother. She smiled and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "I think it always will," she said. The conductor greeted each passenger as they boarded, his serene smile unchanged. As the Dream Express pulled away, the forest faded into the twilight, its golden glow blending seamlessly with the night sky. The passengers sat quietly, their hearts full of the forest's whispers. Each of them carried a piece of the timeless night within them, a reminder that even in the endless rush of night, moments of stillness could be found, and in those moments, dreams could take root and grow. As the train journeyed towards its next destination, the passengers felt a newfound sense of peace, knowing that time was no longer their master, but a companion on their path. The Dream Express rolled smoothly onward, carrying its passengers through the ever-shifting dreamscape. The train glided past glowing galaxies and shimmering clouds of color, each vista more magical than the last. Inside, the passengers sat quietly, their hearts still touched by the whispers of the forest of timeless nights. The conductor's voice broke the silence, warm and inviting, carrying a note of excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, our next stop, the Carnival of Dreams. Here the impossible becomes reality, and every dream takes form. Prepare yourselves for wonders and delights beyond imagination. The passengers exchanged curious glances, the quiet hum of the train now charged with anticipation. The train slowed, and outside the windows, a kaleidoscope of light and color burst into view. The Carnival of Dreams sprawled out in every direction, a dazzling array of rides, games, and attractions illuminated by millions of twinkling lights. The air seemed to hum with excitement, carrying the faint sound of laughter, cheerful music, and the occasional roar of applause. As the train doors opened, the passengers stepped onto a platform made of polished brass that sparkled under the carnival's glow. The platform led to a grand archway adorned with swirling patterns of golden light. Above the archway, a sign flickered with the words, "The Carnival of Dreams. All that you imagine awaits." The passengers moved through the archway, their senses overwhelmed by the sights, sounds, and smells of the carnival. The air was filled with the aroma of spun sugar, roasted nuts, and buttery popcorn. Performers in shimmering costumes twirled and danced, their movements leaving trails of glittering light. Everywhere they looked, there were attractions unlike anything they had ever seen. A towering Ferris wheel spun lazily in the distance, its carriages shaped like glowing moons and stars. A carousel stood nearby, but instead of traditional horses, it was adorned with fantastical creatures, winged lions, unicorns, and dragons that seemed to breathe fire as they galloped. One by one, the passengers dispersed, drawn to different parts of the carnival. A young woman wandered into the Hall of Mirrors, its entrance framed by intricate swirls of silver and gold. Inside, the mirrors reflected not her present self, but versions of her from different times and possibilities. In one mirror, she saw herself as a fearless explorer, her boots caked with mud as she stood atop a mountain peak. In another, she was surrounded by children, her hands covered in paint as she taught them how to create art. The mirrors whispered softly, their voices like the rustling of leaves. "Which dream will you choose?" they asked. The woman stared at her reflections, a small smile forming on her lips. "Maybe all of them," she whispered, stepping out of the hall with a newfound sense of purpose. The young boy and his mother were drawn to the carousel of wishes, its glowing creatures moving with a graceful, hypnotic rhythm. The boy hesitated before climbing onto the back of a shimmering phoenix, its golden feathers warm to the touch. His mother chose a sleek silver dolphin that seemed to swim through the air as it moved. As the carousel began to spin, the world around them dissolved into a blur of light and sound. The boy closed his eyes and made a wish, his heart filled with hope. When he opened his eyes, he saw a vision of himself, standing tall and confident, surrounded by friends who cheered him on. His mother saw a vision too, her son happy and fulfilled, his laughter echoing in a future where he had found his place in the world. When the ride slowed and the visions faded, the boy looked up at his mother with wide eyes. "Do you think it will come true?" he asked. She smiled and took his hand. "I think it already has," she said softly. Elsewhere, an older man found himself at a booth labeled "The Game of Chances." The booth's attendant, a tall figure in a dark cloak, smiled as the man approached. "Step right up," the attendant said, their voice both inviting and mysterious. "This game reveals what lies beyond the choices you've made." The man hesitated before picking up a small silver token and placing it on the spinning wheel. The wheel turned, its colors blending together until it stopped abruptly, pointing to a glowing door that appeared before him. He stepped through the door and was greeted by a vision of his younger self, standing in a bustling city square. In this vision, he had chosen to follow his passion for music, and now he was playing the violin, surrounded by an enraptured crowd. The music was alive with emotion, and the man's heart swelled with pride as he watched. When the vision faded, the man stepped back into the carnival, his eyes glistening. "It's not too late," he murmured to himself, his hand trembling as he touched the invisible violin strings in his memory. The maze of dreams was a sprawling labyrinth of twisting paths and shimmering walls that seemed to shift and change with every step. A woman ventured inside, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. As she navigated the maze, she encountered doors marked with glowing symbols. Each door opened to reveal a moment from her life, some joyful, others painful. At one door, she saw herself turning away from an opportunity out of fear, and the sight filled her with regret. But at another door, she saw herself taking a leap of faith, stepping onto a stage and sharing her poetry with an audience that erupted into applause. The vision was so vivid that it brought tears to her eyes. When she finally emerged from the maze, she felt lighter, as though she had shed the weight of her doubts and fears. As the night wore on, the carnival's energy seemed to grow even more vibrant. The ride spun faster, the music grew louder, and the performers danced with renewed vigor. The passengers reunited near the Grand Pavilion, where a massive stage had been set up. The conductor appeared, his navy suit shimmering under the carnival lights. He raised his hands, and the crowd fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying over the noise of the carnival, "you have walked among your dreams, faced your fears, and glimpsed your possibilities. Tonight, let us celebrate all that you are and all that you can be." As he spoke, the lights of the carnival dimmed, and the sky above them lit up with a dazzling display of fireworks. Each burst of light seemed to take shape, a bird in flight, a blooming flower, a spinning wheel, before fading into the night. The passengers watched in awe, their hearts swelling with wonder. For a moment it felt as though time itself had stopped, and they were suspended in a perfect, timeless joy. When the fireworks faded and the carnival began to quiet, the train's whistle sounded softly in the distance. The passengers made their way back to the platform, their steps slower now, as though reluctant to leave. As they boarded the Dream Express, they carried the carnival's magic with them, the memories of wishes made, fears faced, and dreams rekindled. The young boy looked out the window as the train pulled away, the lights of the carnival growing smaller and smaller. "Do you think it will ever come back?" he asked his mother. She smiled and squeezed his hand. "Maybe," she said, "but I think part of us will always be there." And as the Dream Express carried its passengers toward the horizon, the Carnival of Dreams faded into the distance, its light becoming one of the stars. The train moved with a quiet certainty, carrying its passengers toward the final stop of the journey. The train's rhythmic hum filled the carriages, soothing and steady, like the heartbeat of a sleeping world. Each passenger sat in thoughtful silence, their minds lingering on the wonders they had experienced: the Garden of Echoes, the River of Stars, the Library of Forgotten Stories, the Forest of Timeless Nights, and the Carnival of Dreams. The conductor's voice echoed softly through the train. his tone calm but imbued with a sense of finality. Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching our last destination, the Station of Awakening. Please take a moment to reflect on your journey. As we part ways, remember that the dreams you've touched are never truly lost. They live within you, waiting to be brought into the waking world. The train slowed, its motion as smooth as a whisper. Outside the windows, a soft light began to seep into the sky, blending the deep indigo of night with the first blush of dawn. The Station of Awakening emerged from the mist like a mirage, its structure simple yet elegant. The platform was made of gleaming white marble that seemed to glow faintly, and its arched roof was open to the sky, allowing the approaching light of morning to filter through. As the train came to a stop, the passengers stepped off one by one, their footsteps echoing faintly in the quiet stillness. The air here was different, cool and fresh, with the faintest hint of lavender and dew. A single clock stood at the center of the platform, its hands frozen at a time that didn't seem to exist. Around its base, small golden flowers bloomed, their petals shimmering like sunlight caught in a dream. The conductor stood near the clock, his navy suit immaculate, his hat tilted slightly forward. He greeted each passenger with a warm smile and a nod. "Your journey does not end here," he said, his voice kind. "This is merely the beginning of something new. The memories you carry will guide you, and the choices you make will write the next chapters of your story." The passengers lingered on the platform, reluctant to leave the sanctuary of the Dream Express. They looked out across the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight touched the edges of the world. A young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, his face a mixture of curiosity and sadness. "Is it time to wake up?" he asked softly. His mother knelt down and cupped his face in her hands. "Yes, but waking up doesn't mean the dream is over. It means we get to make it real." The boy nodded, his eyes glistening with understanding. As each passenger prepared to leave, the conductor approached them with a small glowing token. The tokens were unique, some shaped like stars, others like flowers, books, or keys. "These are reminders," the conductor explained, "symbols of what you've learned, what you've seen, and what you hold within you. Keep them close, and they will guide you when the world feels uncertain." The young boy received a glowing feather, golden and warm to the touch. "This is for your courage," the conductor said with a smile. A woman who had rediscovered her love for music was given a tiny silver note that hummed softly in her palm. "A melody to remind you of the song you carry," the conductor said. Each passenger accepted their token with quiet gratitude, the light of the gifts reflecting in their eyes. Beyond the station's platform, a golden archway shimmered in the soft morning light. It marked the threshold between the dreamscape and the waking world. As the passengers moved toward it, the dreamlike quality of the station began to fade. The stars above dimmed, and the horizon grew brighter, the colors of sunrise painting the sky in shades of pink, orange, and gold. The first passenger stepped through the archway and vanished, their silhouette dissolving into light. One by one, the others followed, each crossing the threshold with a mixture of hesitation and resolve. The young boy clung to his mother's hand as they approached the archway. He glanced back at the Dream Express, its elegant carriages gleaming faintly in the morning light. "Will the train still be here?" he asked. The conductor tipped his hat. "The Dream Express is always here," he said. "Whenever you need it, you'll find it waiting." Reassured, the boy smiled and stepped through the archway with his mother, their forms fading into the golden light. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the station grew quiet. The Dream Express remained motionless for a moment, its carriages empty but filled with the echoes of laughter, wonder, and discovery. Then, with a soft, melodic whistle, the train began to move, gliding gently into the mist until it disappeared entirely. The Station of Awakening stood silent, its marble platform bathed in the light of a new day. In their beds, the passengers stirred. The young boy opened his eyes to the soft light of dawn streaming through the window. For a moment he felt disoriented, the vivid colors of the dreamscape lingering in his mind. Then he glanced at his nightstand and saw the golden feather resting there, warm and real. Elsewhere, a woman woke to the faint sound of music, a melody she hadn't heard in years playing softly in her mind. She smiled, her heart light with the promise of new beginnings. The man who had seen himself as an adventurer woke with a new resolve, his feet already itching to walk paths he had long avoided. Each passenger carried something of the dream with them, an idea, a memory, a spark of inspiration. Though the Dream Express had vanished, its presence remained, woven into the fabric of their waking lives. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the passengers went about their day, their hearts filled with quiet wonder. They carried with them the lessons of their journey, the dreams they had touched, and the possibilities they had glimpsed. And somewhere in the space between dreams and reality, the Dream Express continued its journey, gliding silently through the star-filled void, ready to carry new passengers to the place that only dreams could reach. The conductor stood at the helm, his gaze steady as he looked ahead. With a soft whistle, the train vanished into the horizon, leaving only a faint echo behind, a whisper on the wind that said, "Your dreams are never far away." Good night.